So last week, when she described the difference between hospital chaplaincy and congregational ministry, you might remember Elaine said that in the hospital, you don't really get to know people or have sustained relationships in the same ways that you can in a congregation. Now, that's mostly true, of course, but there are a few exceptions. My exception when I worked in the hospital was a woman whose husband was in the ICU for the second time that summer. He'd had cancer and then mostly recovered. But then there was one complication after another. It sent them both back to the hospital for various reasons. Again and again, he'd get better, he'd get really worse, back and forth, over and over. She never once thought that it was entirely over. It was just taking a while. Until one afternoon, I was sitting with her and he was intubated again, and she was just exhausted. And the words, they just like tumbled out. Is this it? Is this the end? She asked. It's the thing about endings. Like I said before, a lot of times we can't really see them or know if it really is the end until much later. We can't see them, or we don't want to see them, often because our sense of identity is caught up in what has been, what was. Endings can signal not just a transition in circumstances, but a transition in who we are. An ending not just out there, but something ending in here, in us too. After my patient let that question spill out, she told me immediately how badly she felt, because she knew that at least a part of her wanted the answer to be yes. Yes, this would be the end. But what would that mean about who she was, like as a wife or as a person? What would it mean about who her husband was to her? Her question signaled that regardless of what was happened in this moment and her husband's health, something had already shifted, something had already changed, maybe something had even ended, something about her. In his classic work on transitions, William Bridges talks about how people tend to take endings either too seriously or not seriously enough, because we tend to confuse endings with finality, so that any sort of talk about something being over might mean that everything is over. We see them without sequel, he writes, forgetting that they are the first phase of a transition process and a precondition of self-renewal. And because they scare us, we try to avoid them. And in avoiding them, we avoid opening our hearts to the new beginning that we long for, and that life continues to offer us each day, each hour, each breath. When it came time, as I was making that video for you, I decided I should do the exercise myself, make my own list of things that have ended. And to be honest, I really struggled. I don't know how it was for you, but it was really hard for me. Like my patient in the hospital, I found that I was actually really unsure which parts of my life are just like a step in a road to recovery, or if is this the end? I mean, will we go back to life as it was last January before COVID? Which parts of life have ended? Which are just sort of suspended? As a minister and as a mom, these two main roles of my life, it is a question that I face every day in both small and big ways. Both school and church life, after all, have been turned totally upside down in the pandemic. So lots has changed. But what parts of that has ended? Like Bridges predicts, I can get stuck trying to answer this question as a matter of finality, like what's entirely over, what's done forever. Not only does this stump me because I don't obviously have enough information to know, but along the way, my identity gets triggered too. I don't know really who I am if life as it was is over. And I say that kind of flippantly, but it's actually really terrifying to consider. It can shut me down, immobilize me, and also blind me to the new beginnings of the day and the hour and the breath that I was affirming just a few moments ago. What helps, what helps in this big change and in all of life's changes is to remember that we don't have to answer as if we're trying to figure out the end. We just need to notice what's ending right now. What's ending today? Because things are always ending all the time. The day begins only after it has ended. The breath in follows the breath out. And being in tune with this natural cycle doesn't necessarily make the endings as they come easier, or maybe even doesn't even necessarily make them less painful, but it does allow us to keep our hearts open so that we don't miss the beginning that is emerging too. The healing, the growth, the creativity, the beauty, the life. To make an ending is to make a beginning. The end is where we start from. Let's sing together once more. Christopher's made another beautiful visual meditation to go with this song that affirms that greater truth that surrounds us and holds us through all of life's endings and beginnings and everything in between.